Hello and welcome to Residential Home Authority. We are your hosts, Vanessa St. Clair,
And I'm Don Meinhardt.
and we are a father-daughter duo talking about all things real estate. And today we have a very important, exciting, informative, entertaining episode about things you need to know if you're planning on selling your home in 2025. Because we're coming up on the new year, and I feel like a lot of things change in the seasons with real estate, but also people are super weird around the new year, and I don't think they know like what trends are going on. So we're going to be talking about some things that sellers will need to know. Is there anything that I missed in that
Exactly.
description?
The big thing that to start out with is to realize that 2024 was actually a bad year in real estate sales. It was the lowest since 1995. And one of the big things coming into the new year that's going to continue to be a trend is the lack of inventory on the market
Okay. Now,
and the
what do you
pressure
think
and the pressure on
contributes?
pricing.
What do you think contributes to the lack of inventory? Is it like pre-existing homes or new construction? Like why is there a lack of inventory? I know that that's a super broad question, sorry, but can you
It
just
is.
explain
Well,
the entire US housing market in a simple answer?
There,
No, sorry.
there you go. I'll be getting pretty old if I did that. Well, let's put it this way. I've been at this a long time, and you never know. I mean, for sure, there's a ton of people predicting this is going to be a great year. There's a lot of people saying interest rates are going to drop, and they kept saying that. It really didn't happen. But the reality is that the housing prices, and keep in mind, new construction drives the market. It's that simple. The cost to build a home continues to go up. And what was scary was the statistic that came out this year that your first time home buyer, the average age is 38 years old, the
Yeah,
highest it's ever been. And
we've
what we're
discussed
seeing
that
now is,
before, and
yeah,
it's such a
and what we're
bummer.
seeing now is increase in costs.
Yeah.
But there's some big things I want to go over because people still move.
Okay.
They still need to sell at times. And if you're going to sell, and that's what this episode's about, there are some things you really need to think about and be prepared for. So, are you ready?
I'm ready. I want to hear.
Okay. The first thing is, and I'm going to tell a little story with this one as well, but because it's going to be lower inventory, you've got to think about where you're going to move.
Okay.
And you've got to think about what it's going to take to move into that house or wherever it is
So
you want to go.
So you're saying that if you are selling your home, you want to think about the new house you're going to be moving into before you sell, or is this like after you sell? Like what do you mean?
Before, before.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you a key reason for that. Number one, we know it's low inventory. So if you put your home on your market and you want it to sell quickly for top dollar, that's usually the goal, I should say. And that hits you. And I'm going to give you an example. This is going back early in my career, but I had sold this young couple a house, and their family grew, so they wanted to sell their most recent purchase. And I met with them. We got their house ready, got it on the market. First day it's on the market, they get multiple offers. And this was going back before pre-pandemic time. So it wasn't typical that you would get multiple offers. But they turned to me and they said, yeah, this one offer is $2,000 more than what we're asking. We're going to respond to them at $12,000 higher than what we're asking. And I said, well, they'll probably turn you down because I'm
Yeah.
sure with their offer, they felt they were in first place. And sure enough, they walked. But here's the bad thing. Everybody walked because
Okay.
I had to respond to them and say, this is a response to all of you. Whoever comes back with the best terms, they're going to agree, but this is what they want.
Okay,
And
but
here's
that
what
person
happens.
kind of sounded greedy though. Like they kind of sounded a
No,
little
no, it
bit.
wasn't money. Their reasoning that they told me was they hadn't figured out where they were going to move to. And they
Oh.
never expected, because of the price we put on their house, they never expected to get an offer right away. That's what they told me. But here's what
Oh,
hurt
so
them. And,
what they
and
were
here's
thinking was
what,
they would put it up for like a few months and then in that process they would look. But then someone came in and was like, "Oh, we'll move in 30 days." And they're like, "Oh God, we don't have a place to go in 30 days." Okay, okay. Now, sorry, I wasn't connecting the dots. Continue.
that's okay. And here's the bad thing that happened by not being prepared for that. The offers walked and they sat on the market for another 6 months, and they ended up getting $12,000 less than what they were listed at when they finally sold. And
Wow.
and here's what's going on that most people don't realize. When you put your house in the market, that information goes out instantly to buyers. And our role as agents, and especially what our group does, is we go beyond what the typical brokerage does. And so immediately people are notified. Now
Yeah.
if they're not moving forward, this house sits. So when a buyer's agent's finally going to show that house, they can go back and see the date very easily of when it was listed. Not only that, what people don't realize is, and it's a real simple move, if I go on to the local multi list, I can see going back probably as far as 12 years now, the history on a house. So I could see when it was bought, when it was sold, how long it was on the market, what price it sold for, whether they refinanced their home or not. I mean, all of it's published.
I was with some friends of mine, and they're talking about buying a house, and they're going through the process, and they found this listing, and it was like they will show you that kind of stuff on Zillow too. Like you can see, I don't know
Yes.
if it doesn't go back that far. Like it doesn't go, and it doesn't give us a ton of information, but you could see what price it was listed at, and then when it was taken off the market, if it was under agreement, et cetera, et cetera. And this was like yo-yoing in price over the course of 6 months. And I'm like, what did they do? Because they wanted top dollar in like April. And then they dropped the price. They were under agreement or something. And then they were taken off the market for like maybe like 6 weeks to 2 months. And then it was like a really, really low price. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe they got something really terrible that they found out about it and they don't know what to do with it. And then all of a sudden they take it off the market again, and then it's a major price. It was really crazy to look at because my friend was asking me, like, do you know what this is about? And I went, oh, girly, I don't know. But if you contact the agent, aren't they required to tell you like what happened? Or
No, it depends. Maybe the better answer is it depends.
okay, okay, I can accept that.
Well, the reason I say that is I can only disclose what I'm a fiduciary if I have the house listed, so I can only disclose what the seller has agreed for me to disclose.
Okay.
But I have a good, if you want me to run down through it, I can give you a general idea of what I'm thinking, and it plays right into what this whole subject was going to be about if you're selling your house in 2025. And
Yeah.
that is okay. They put the house on the market for a price. They ended up obviously getting an offer. They ended up accepting it, and my guess is one of two things happened. Either the financials fell through from the buyer's side of it, or they had a home inspection and the buyers walked.
Which we did talk about in our last episode. So if you want to hear a
Yes.
lot more about inspections, specifically sellers inspections, go listen to our last episode. I think it's really informative, but we have not discussed financials, especially for buyers. And to be honest, I really am also going to be a listener on this one. I don't really know. I, I mostly know about the physical aspect of looking at a house, so I'm very excited to hear your perspective, Dad.
Well, the thing about being a home seller is you have to realize that there was an influx of agents that came into the business during the pandemic or right after the pandemic. So
Okay.
your agents that are working with the buyer and also any inspectors, not to throw that in there, that are working with a buyer, it's
Hmm.
important that the agent that you're listing your home with is on top of understanding both of those factors. So, what do I mean by that? Well, if a buyer comes to us with an offer on one of our homes, we're going to investigate the history of that buyer, who they're mortgaging the property through, and the history of that bank and the loan rep that's representing them so that we can go back and we're not just looking at the financial offer to the seller. We're looking at the person buying the home, their history, their financials, their all
Oh,
the
so like
information we can gather.
the viability of the deal itself. So like
I want to make
what
sure
if,
it's going to close.
okay, yeah. So what you're saying is like, oh, wait, I know what you're talking about because we were talking about this for a deal, I don't know, like a year or two ago, where there was this like crazy online bank, and it's like it not sometimes it's not the person, but it's like, okay, there's like four banks that everyone knows that work with people and whatever. I hate monopolies, but like, okay, we know the reps there, we know this or whatever. But then this person came in and they're like, I'll offer you $50,000 more. But they're
Right.
like, but they're working with something that you've never heard of, and it's in another state, and it's kind of like there's something about it that feels a little sticky. Feels a little. Is that what you
Just
mean, or are
for
you
an
talking about
example,
other stuff?
no, you're right, dead spot on. I'll give you a real quick example of that. We had a buyer come in and make an offer on a house, and they were using an online lender. The thing of it is, and the reason why we told the seller to accept it is because the person buying the home was so financially qualified they could have bought it without a mortgage. We were aware of that, but they went to somebody online. Well, what the online lender did is they sent in an appraiser on the property from out of state. So when they came to the house and they met with the seller and they went through the house, and the seller asked them a few questions and we asked them questions, and we found out they had no clue what they were looking for. And they came back with an appraisal much lower than what the buyer had agreed to purchase the property for. So we had to challenge that. We've been doing this a long time. We were able to challenge it. We were able to actually, we got in touch with the lender and one of their top people and explained what was going on, and we ended up getting the loan through.
Oh, that's
But it's a
great.
matter of, but that was fortunate because we knew that the buyer was financially qualified to pay cash. You don't
Yeah.
always have that. So I would say yes, that's a major
Most
factor
people don't.
in
Most
selling
people
your home.
can't pay with cash.
That's true.
Wouldn't that be
But
so nice if
here's the
everyone
thing.
was like, I just can pay for the whole thing out of pocket?
What you're fighting though with that, and what you're fighting with the inspections, is the walk, because that's going to show up as you were talking about these people looking at that particular house. They saw, why did that go off the market? Why did they put it back on? And lastly, and here's why I think it was inspections, is because when they did bring it back on, they came in at a higher price.
Okay.
Everybody, when we meet with sellers, everybody thinks their house is great and it's perfect and it's going to have no problem through inspections. And then they get them and they're like, oh my gosh. We can kind of
Yeah.
prevent that because we know what we're looking at. We know conditions. We typically tell people, but I do like that pre-inspection ahead of time. I really do.
Yeah, the thing that I'm really intrigued by is the appraisal process and what that looks like, because we were sometimes appraisals would happen when we were inspecting, or when we would I feel like I got to meet a few of them, and when I was going through my classes or whatever, there were some appraisal, or what are they called? Appraisers. Okay, I was going to say
Appraisers.
like appraisal officers. Sorry, a little rusty, guys. It's early in the morning for me. And so I'm so fascinated by why they say that certain things are worth certain. Because I remember we were walking through and we were in a house and they were like, oh, this has this quality, so that's why it's going to get this price. But there's a lot of research that goes into before they even tour the house. Like,
Absolutely.
how do they determine price, and what is their function with the bank? Like, are they helping the bank, or are they helping the buyer?
It depends. And where it depends is this: it depends on the financial, and I'm letting something out of the bag that I can't prove. This is a personal opinion, and that's what the podcast is about, is our personal opinions.
Okay, okay.
And I do have experience in this. Another one of those jobs that I did for a little bit. I did work for one of the top appraisers in Pittsburgh for a short interim because I wanted to learn. That's my
Oh, I
habit.
know that. I know,
Um,
Dad. I describe you as like those guys who are obsessed with trains, who you had a hyper fixation on real estate, and then you've done everything that you can do circling around that topic. It's amazing. I don't know anyone who knows more about a specific topic, like, because it's like every angle of it. So no, I know you used to be an appraiser. I just don't understand. That was like before
well,
my
no,
time.
I'm
So,
not an appraiser. I just did it to see if I wanted to become one. I was an assistant.
oh, oh,
Okay,
okay.
but and we're
Learning about
going
the
back a ways.
lore.
So we're going back a ways. So this statement may have changed, but I'd be surprised if it has. The bank would call and say, we're setting up an appraiser, and they would say, go out there, get your sharp pencil and figure out whether this loan should go through.
Okay.
Or we really like these people. We really like what we're seeing. We feel that we want to lend on this. So, what is that telling me? It's saying this person, we're concerned about their finances. So, that house, if we get stuck with it because they walk on the mortgage, we want to be able to sell it. And if we can't, we know who threw the value on it.
Yeah.
The other one is we feel very confident that they're going to live out the life of the loan or sell it someday. They're not going to be a problem. So don't you be a problem.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I don't know whether it's changed much. And I know people that hear this might be upset, but it really comes down to the viability of the client buying the house and their strength in order to purchase it. And with that said, you might be saying, well, you just talked about someone who could pay cash,
Okay.
but in the loan, the appraisal didn't come in.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that was an online bank.
Yeah.
I'm talking
They're
about
not.
local banks. They understand
Yeah.
the process. They understand. And that's the thing. When you have an experienced agent listing your home, they understand what banks are going to put the loan through 9 times out of 10. Because the real goal is once that first offer is accepted, that you get it to close. That's the goal.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, this is like we everyone's happy. You get the first house you put in. The seller accepts the offer. Like ideally, it's a walk in the park, although it rarely is. So we were talking about when you're the listing agent and you're looking at the offer that's coming in, you're investigating. Are there any other things that you would be looking at besides the buyer themselves or the loan type itself, or is that sort of like a huge topic
Both.
that's encompassing?
That's something we can cover in the future as far as offers go and items of that nature. I kind of want to just prepare somebody for if they're thinking about selling in 2025. So we'll kind
Yeah,
of jump
totally.
back. So
Absolutely.
just to recap, we talked about the fact that you really should know where you're going to go so that if you do get an offer, you're not refusing it because you don't have a place to go. That's number
Okay.
one. Number two, you should realize that it's expensive to sell a home.
Yeah.
It really is. Because not only are real estate commissions involved, and I'm going to touch on that briefly, but you also have the closing costs and the transfer taxes. And so it's important that when you're thinking about the value of your home, that before you move forward, you take away those costs. Now, an agent can provide you with that, but you can also get that from any loan rep, anybody that you're talking to. Because whether you're buying or whether you're selling, the important factor here typically is going to be financing. So it's important that you know all of those costs up front
Yeah.
of what you're going to go through. So if you've determined what those costs are going to be, you have an idea what your home will sell for, now you're starting to get into the driver's seat. And if you determine that the end outcome of selling your home gives you enough money to buy what you want, you know where you want to go, you're in a great position to get rolling.
Okay, so pause real quick. Pause. If you need the money from the sale to fund the purchase of the new house, but it's a good idea to have your game plan moving out, like your new spot first. Are you how could that work? Like I'm assuming when you say you want to have your game plan for the new home, you're talking about the specific house. You're not talking about an area, right? Like you're saying, "Oh, I want to move to this new house." I should that be under agreement? Like how can you straddle both of those sales at the same time if you're
Well,
if
there's a
you're the
couple of
seller
ways
of
to
the
do it.
original? Okay.
Well, it's going to be well, let's put it this way. The way the market's been in the lack of inventory, in the past, when the market was slow and way before pre-pandemic years, you could possibly put forth an offer where you said, okay, I'm going to make my offer. If you agree to it, it is going to be contingent on my selling my home.
Okay.
But to get that type of offer accepted anymore, it's kind of tough because of the lack of inventory, because if homes are positioned right in their price right, they're not going to sit on the market for more than a month.
Okay.
So that's number one. But have a game plan. So let's say, hey, I did see some houses that I believe that I'd be happy with. One or two would be great. I think to ask for more than that might be tough. Or my alternative is if I can't get the house I want, I've got a place to go. I'm going to rent.
Okay.
I'm okay
So,
with that. Or I'm going to go
okay.
into temporary housing of some type. But you have to mentally be set for that, because a lot of people think, well, I'm going to sell my home and I'm going to move the exact dream home that I want. Unless a builder is going to build it for you, your chances in this market aren't real high. The other thing that you can do is you might be able to get a swing loan, bridge loan they call it. So in other words, I have enough equity in my house or enough cash in the bank that I'm still able to qualify for a mortgage. The problem there would be that you own two houses, but it's not a big problem if you're positioned right and you know your finances and you have a plan.
Okay, so wait, explain the bridge slash swing loan concept to me. So what does that mean?
I own my house, or I have a mortgage on it, but I have a good bit of it paid off. I go to
Okay.
the bank to get qualified for a new mortgage for another house, and I'm able to financially qualify for that house, in essence, owning two homes. But I turn around and I can go ahead and make an offer on that house of my dreams and get it under agreement, and at the same time put my home on the market and get it moved.
Okay. Do
So I'm
you have
securing
to
my future
be
purchase.
gotcha?
And there's
So
a
this
little
is
risk.
really
There's a little risk there.
okay. You could possibly end up with a situation where you have two houses.
Yeah,
So
lucky you.
presumably you need to be able to afford. What do you mean like me? What do you mean like what
I'm
do you mean like
joking.
me? I'm a renter.
Okay.
Girl, stop.
Well,
Um so basically, does that work for like normal people or do you have to kind of be like in it?
it
Yeah.
depends. It depends on your financial history. It depends on what you're buying, what price range you're in, where you're moving to. I mean, there's a lot of variable factors there. I'm just saying that it's
Okay.
possible.
Also, though, I would really only want to do that if I was really set on the new house. Like, this is the house. I don't want any other house. Like, would I do that? You would really only do that
That
if it's like this is the dream. Like this
yes,
is the my storybook, never gonna find another like it type of place. And we
yes.
just okay, well that hopefully that also would inspire if you are kind of, gonna have your house that you're selling, it would inspire you to get your act together and price it right and be ready to go. Like you're not gonna try and push for
That should be your inspiration, anyways, because
oh,
we
okay.
go back to what we were talking about earlier. As soon as you put that house in the market, it's dated. There's a date. So now people are looking at how long is it sitting there? And we all know, and there's a magic number, and as a realtor doing this for so many years, I don't know what that magic number is, but eventually you get to a point where I wonder why that house hasn't sold. It's been on the market a long time. But here's what it signals, and this is my concern. It signals to a buyer that you haven't priced it right, or there's something wrong with the house, so therefore you don't deserve to get what you should have got in the first place as far as value
Gotcha.
goes.
Yeah.
And those
It's
dates, it's been proven, Vanessa, it's been proven that the longer you sit on the market, the less likely you are going to get what the real value of that house is.
yeah, yeah. You're not even gonna get market value, you'll get below.
Right.
Like good you were trying to shoot above and beyond and now you're going to barely get what it's worth. You're actually going to be losing something. Okay.
Well, there's also another factor you've got to take into consideration where there's really been a big change in this past year that nobody dealt with before, and that was the change in buyer agency. Okay, so what do I mean by that? In the past, when you listed your house with a realtor, you typically would agree to a commission. So I'm just going to throw one out there because we're really not supposed to talk. Commissions are not fixed. Let me put it this way. For those of you who don't know, brokers do not fix commissions. There's no broker A talking to broker B saying we're going to charge this year. It really comes down to the individual agent and how they feel the money they're going to need because they're operating a business, what they're going to need in order to get your home sold in the quickest amount of time.
And to
And
be
I will
honest,
forewarn
quick,
you, the cheapest is not the best. But we had that
yeah,
discussion in a previous
the
thing.
cheapest is not the
So
best, but I would like to make a slight note to listeners, which is that I don't think people understand that for from an agent's perspective to be a listing agent, you're running ads, you're paying for exposure to the house. You're not it's not like a like when agents are promoting things, you might see, the bus stop bench sign of someone's face and be like, "Oh, they're promoting themselves." And some people do that. But most of the time your ad dollars and that commission is really being eaten up by staging and photography and videography
we're going
and
to get into that.
sometimes showing agents. Like it's not they are selling the house and they are putting a lot of money behind that specific house. So it's almost like the agent is investing in your house selling process. Like they are putting their own money into it before they see the commission. So you're not just paying for their
Not
time, you're paying for what they're doing.
Well, that's really why you're going to interview an agent, because you're going to find out what they do. Because let me just help people who are watching this. There's a baseline. So in other words, and we're going to break this out. Let's use it. I'm just going to use 6% to make it simple. In the past,
Okay.
when there was a 6% commission, typically it was 3% went to the listing broker. The money is always paid to the brokers. So 3% went to the listing broker, 3% went to the selling broker if it was an even split. And then after that,
Wait,
the
you mean
agent would
buying
get,
broker? You mean listing and buying?
yeah, listing and buying, listing broker,
Okay,
buying
sorry.
broker. Okay.
Okay.
But back then, you as a seller would say, okay, I'm going to pay 6% and that split would be made. That's not the way it is today. A buyer actually signs with a buyer's agent to represent them, and they are obligated to pay the buyer's agent. And your listing side is going to be, let's use that same example, it's going to be 3%. So you're agreeing to pay 3%. Now, my
Okay.
advice to a seller is plan on 6, because the buyer agent's probably going to ask you to compensate and make up for that money that the seller or the buyer is going to pay them in some way. That's okay. That all comes down to the offer. I don't want to confuse people. So the bottom line is,
Okay.
when you talk about agents, and we had discussed this, we will discuss it more, I'm sure, in the future. There is, when that commission of 3% comes to the broker keeps a percentage of that and pays a percentage of that money to the agent. Now, because the broker is taking a percentage of that money, they provide services and connections to internet sites and various ways of advertising the property, and that is set. I mean, that'll happen for every agent that brings a listing in, but here's where the difference is, and you brought it up.
Yeah.
Does the agent have the money, or do they promote it in other ways? And some of them you brought up, which we'll talk about, is staging and things of that nature.
I wanted to
Go ahead.
clarify real quick is just in case we have anyone who's super new to the real estate conversation, they really are listening to this with fresh, baby, naive ears. For anyone who is unaware, a broker is basically, or a brokerage, I should say, not specifically a broker. Brokerage is overseeing the agents on a loose level. A brokerage would be something like Keller Williams. Oh crap! Now I can't remember any of them.
Compass,
Ryan
Achieve.
Serhant.
I mean,
Ryan,
there's a
if
lot.
you're a big fan of Ryan Serhant, what he did was he started his own brokerage. So he was an agent and he worked for someone else, meaning that he had his own business, but his business was under the umbrella of whoever he was working for. He ended up starting his own brokerage, meaning that not only when he sells something does he get a commission from himself of selling it, but his company also gets to keep that money. Or if other people
He's
sell
keeping he's
under
keeping
him.
100%. He's keeping 100% versus maybe 70% as an agent.
Yeah,
But the one
but
thing that
sometimes
he,
the
the
split
one
can be
thing that makes,
crazy.
well, the one thing that makes that in his favor is now he controls the marketing that all of his agents do to a certain cost.
Yeah.
But once again, depending on the agent you hire, depends on what they're going to do above and beyond. And I can tell you, the secret in the sauce is what gets done above and beyond, and the
Okay.
knowledge that that agent has. The knowledge is that an agent brings is extremely valuable. That's why I don't worry about AI taking my job. Don't have to worry about it. The
AI doesn't
changes
know
in,
all the people that you know, and AI hasn't worked with these people for 30
that's,
years. There's really something
oh
great
yeah,
about working with someone who you have enough connections, but you're like still fresh, you're still in it, you're still doing it every day. Sometimes people, once they hit a certain point, they kind of check out a little bit, but you're like still in the game, still in the grind. Whenever you see, whenever, let's say you have something coming up, you're like, oh, wait, I think I might actually know someone who might want to buy this, or I know this agent and we were talking last week and their buyer is looking for something. Like you just know people and you're connecting people to situations. That's something that
oh,
can't really be replicated.
absolutely. Because one of the things in real estate for the brokers, they actually see the production of the agents. It's recorded. I mean, if you're working with a buyer's agent and they want to know how many homes somebody sold, and there's a lot of information available to that agent, but we do, as you said, someone may come to us and say, this is what we're looking to purchase. And we may know a house that's not on the market and say, we talk to the seller, and the seller says, sure, if I get the right offer or this works out, I'm willing to sell it to them. So there's a lot of off-market sales that go on, especially with your agents that are really involved in the business. Keep in
Yeah.
mind, it's hard to believe, but 90% of the sales are through 10% or less than all the agents that are out there. In this area of Pennsylvania, there's 9,000 agents listed, but still less than 10% do 90% of the volume.
That kind of makes sense though, because like when you've got an energy, you're kind of everywhere. It's like when it rains, it pours, you know? People, they like working with you, they tell other people about you, you know, that definitely I think is a factor there.
Well, the other factor is if you're into that 90% or into that bracket of doing a lot of business, you're working every day and
Yeah.
you're putting in longer than an 8-hour day. But that's your choice. It does serve customers very well. So back to where we were. You had mentioned pricing your home correctly, and that's going to be extremely important, but there's some other factors before we even get to that. The next thing that you have to be aware of is you're also going to have to fill out disclosure forms. So the nice thing about disclosure forms that's going to force you to think about the past history of your house, which should help you in determining your pricing. But more importantly, it's conveying to the client, at least during the homeownership that you've had the house, of what's actually gone on with that house, what you had to correct or change or whatever you did with it. So you are going to have to do those, and a pre-inspection will help you with that because it'll make you more accurate and protect you more. But the bottom line is you will have to fill out disclosures.
Something that we used to recommend to people that I think is really great is whenever you have work done, you should save the invoices, save the description of work. Make this easy on yourself. Get one of those humongous giant binders with the rings that are like that big. Sorry, I have no idea from the camera. Like a ring that big. And just put everything in there. You know, oh, we got new windows. Because let's say you do live in a house for like even 5 years. I can barely remember what I did 6 months ago. You should have a record of everything you're doing and also an approximate cost of what that was to do. So that way you can sort of justify, oh, this is why I'm selling it for this price. And if anyone questions you, oh, this person did this work, if there's something wrong with it, you also have access to that. I don't know if people still offer warranties or what their guarantees are on their work, but you should have a record of everything you do, especially if you're doing like a big reno. And also, it's really beneficial because it lets people know that you didn't just have like your cousin Joe. Like you didn't just have some random person who didn't know what they were doing do it.
That's important. I can say this, if you go to pittsburghhomeguide.com, which is a website for the group that I'm in, there's an article in there about building permits and not having a building permit, which plays into what you said, which is important. But if you're in the metro area of Pittsburgh or you're going to look at moving here, if you contact us through our email, which is residentialhomeauthority@gmail.com, or through this podcast, we will give you a free what we call an electronic home binder, where you can keep track of everything.
Oh, so you don't even need the
Electronically.
physical, you can just like keep it like online and all in one spot?
Yes. And
Oh, Dad, I didn't know you were doing that now. That's awesome.
yeah, it costs us a bit of money, but we're happy to give back. We've been blessed in this
Yeah,
business, so
ultimately it'll help people. Like ultimately it's a resource to help people if you want to start doing some work on your place, it's a great idea to keep track of all of that info.
right.
But anyway, we should continue on things you need to know if you're a seller in 2025. What's the next thing? What's the next thing we need to know?
Your agent should be offering staging.
Oh, okay.
All that I can say is this. I have, since coming back and joining this group to work with, we talked about staging. We made it part of our listing presentation. It is part of what we do when we list. The difference in staging is a home is like night and day. It could be as much as where the stager goes in, they talk to the people and they talk to them how to make changes within their house, or if they're moving out, if they're going to move out ahead of time, which we love, we'll bring furniture in and stage the house.
That's
Depends
so
on a
nice.
certain price point. but
Okay.
it changes the effect. And I've had the opportunity to see that firsthand because I had two similarly built homes by a builder. We put
Okay.
staging into one. We had one that was vacant. They were basically the same floor plan, same size, and it was interesting to hear the comments when I took them into the two different homes. So staging it's worth the expense.
You know what's really shocking to me? Because I think if I had to pinpoint, I don't know if anyone can tell, I'm a little artsy fartsy, a little creative. I go into a space and I'm like, oh, I could do this and this and this. It's actually kind of shocking. Sometimes I forget because a lot of my friends are like that. And so we have crazy imaginations. But there's a lot of people who don't have brains like that. They're very much like, this is the way that the staging was, so that's how I'm going to set up. Like they don't think about floor plans. They kind of like it to be automated for them. People like to know how it's supposed to look, you know?
It defines the space.
Yeah.
It makes it, believe it or not, you may be putting a lot more furniture into a house than the people had, but it defines the space and it makes it look like, whoa. The other funny thing is the reaction of the people selling their home. It's amazing because a lot of times people come back and say, I never knew it could look like that.
Well,
Maybe I
most
don't want to sell.
people,
Our fear once in a while is maybe they'll change their mind and not want to sell their home.
it definitely changes the layout. And also, there are so many things that people can do when they are putting their house on the market. If you're not working with an agent who stages your house, although you should be. But if you aren't, or maybe you're trying to sell it yourself, never recommended to do that. But just in case, there are certain things that you can do to make it a little bit cozier, which also I don't like the whole cookies in the oven thing. That I think was a thing that
We
it's like
don't
a
do
joke
that.
that people make. No, I know that. No, I know that. But like that's a thing that people talk about on TV. They're like, "Oh, you have
Oh,
candles out." And I'm like, "You have no idea how sensitive people are to smells. Cut that. Stop it. Just make sure your house doesn't smell bad. Just open a few windows like the day before and you'll be good." Yeah, people I think like just don't have a ton of, you know what we've seen? When people have the wall of wedding photos, that's like them like making out, and it's an entire wall of it. And I'm like, this is a shrine that you need to get some art in your house that isn't that, and maybe take out all of the pictures of you and your spouse because it's insane. Like not the little things, but I'm
I
saying like
agree.
when you
But
have
what that
when
tells
you
me
have
is they didn't have a stager because if they did, that wouldn't be there.
Yeah, it
It's that
tells you that the
simple.
agent doesn't know what they're talking about because other people can't envision themselves in the house if they see a giant 10 by 10 portrait of you. Like, they won't be able to see themselves. They'll be like, oh, they look nice in their house. Yeah.
So there was a client that one of our members of our group went out to meet with them to talk about listing their home, and they came back and I said, "What do you think?" And they said, "Oh my God, it's like a hoarder's house. It's unbelievable." And
Hey,
my
let's
first
stop
com,
here. Let's stop here. No judgment. No judgment. You do you. It doesn't help when you sell your house. It's not good for your mental health, but we don't hate hoarders. Let's not have a hard opinion on hoarders because we'll also sell your hoarder house. Okay? We love you. We just ask that maybe you get rid of all your stuff before you sell. You know, that's all we're saying. That's all we're saying. Continue, proceed.
you scared me there. I thought you were coming down on me for
No, no, no,
saying that.
no.
But anyways,
I don't want to
they,
offend the
they
hoarder community. You
no,
know,
I have relatives that are hoarders, so yeah, I don't want to offend them. But the bottom line is, we talked price, and she said if the house was like we like to see it, finish, have the stager, clean it up, do everything. She goes, I think we're going to be okay, but not in its current state. I said, well, when we send the stager in, I said, do you think they're going to be receptive? And she goes, that's my concern. I'm not sure. Well, make a long story short, stager went in, did whatever they do. At that point in time, then I went out to see the house, basically to look at it, to prepare the marketing and to also evaluate it condition wise to let them know what I saw. When I walked through it, I came back out and I called my team and I said, that house is going to move as soon as we put it on the market because whatever they did, whatever the stager did, oh my God, it's beautiful.
oh,
And
that's great.
then everybody was excited. And the thing of it is the homeowner did not believe, given the price, they were going to get what they were asking. So that was exciting too. and boom, it was gone within a few days, and they got above list, and they were just ecstatic, and so were we. But
Oh, great. I'm glad to
putting
hear
all
that.
the putting all the pieces of the puzzle together to listen to the expert advice, you're going to come out ahead. I mean, the purpose for us talking about this today is we want people to be successful. It's that
Yeah.
simple. I want to see them succeed at whatever they're trying to do. So staging is important. Now, here's the other thing that's extremely important: pictures.
Okay.
We hire an expensive photographer. There's no doubt about it. He's not
But
inexpensive.
it's
But
it's not just that though. He has an eye. He's picking up on details. God bless you. First picture people are going to see is the outside of the house. You don't want 70% of the photo to be the yard.
well, that's that is also the big point, is not only the quality of camera they're using, but some people have just such a great angle to take
Yeah.
pictures that make that house stand out. A great photographer has an eye for angles, and they also know what's going to be conveyed to the buyer client. So it's just not somebody that is a good photographer. It's somebody that understands photography for real estate. And that's
Okay.
a special talent. And it shows up in the photos, and it will also show up in the success of trying to sell your home.
Yeah, it's crazy because we have the guy who shoots with the group. He will take like, I don't know, so many pictures of the kitchen. And it's kind of shocking because and I understand he's trying to get all the angles and I do actually appreciate that, but some of them, it makes the kitchen look really long or something, or it makes we've worked with different people and, depending on the way the angle that you take the picture, it can completely change the shape of the room. It can completely change how the layout looks. You think that the house is going to look a certain way. And then you get there and you go, oh my God, this is not at all what I was thinking. So you want people to have like a clear idea of what they're going to see.
Absolutely. And you really don't want to make something look more fantastic than it actually is, because you're going to disappoint them. So it's got to
That's
be
true.
very accurate. And that's why I said somebody that's really good at it, they're worth what, well, I don't want my photographer to hear that, but they're worth what we're paying them.
Well, he does great work. We love him. He's awesome.
And then lastly, there's a lot of information that's going to go out about the house, including the photos. And what we found is you're striking emotions with buyers with photos. You should be striking emotions with the information. It kills me when I look in the Malta list, and your people will agree with this, the people who were searching for a home, when it says, well, it's close to all amenities, it's close to the expressways, it's close to this. And I'm like, well, what's close to you? That's a big
Yeah.
question. And the reality is, and I know that you're good at this because we have you do our write-ups a lot of times, it's striking the emotion of thinking that you're going to own and live in this house, and it's very powerful. It's definitely a talent
I
that you have there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I can
You're
speak to
welcome.
this at length about how important it is when you are doing your initial MLS description, which is the paragraph that you see when you pull up the house. In my opinion, I think that agents should do two things. They should do an extremely emotive, informational, but mostly painting a picture. You're telling a story. You're bringing people in. You're describing the house in an artful, beautiful, creative way in that small paragraph description. And then when they get to the house, you can even print out like a list. We go above and beyond and we do like a little brochure with pictures and, I make more and I write a whole thing. But sometimes when people have done so many things, I just make a list because there's not enough paper for us to continue. It's so long that I'm like, oh, I can't write beautiful, gorgeous so many times. That's usually like it's a lucky day whenever we have someone who does a lot of cool stuff. But basically, the MLS description, my favorite one that I ever did was, and you know what it's going to be, it's the Fairy Princess storybook house, 1930s, gorgeous. You want to talk about the things that the house actually has strengths in. Don't try to appeal to everyone. Stop trying to be everything to everybody. You are going to speak to the perfect person, and you only need one person who really loves the house to buy it. So there was this house. It had a bunch of old bathrooms, a bunch of, old antique details about it. And that's kind of loved out in LA where I live now, but it's not a huge selling feature back home. Like I think that the population that loves cutesy stuff is a little bit smaller. And we literally were like, curl up with a cozy book next to this antique fireplace, whatever. It was much more artful because I had time and I wasn't improvising it on the spot. But it was like, your storybook forest cottage awaits. And people ate it up. Like the cottagecore girls were like, yes, 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 I'm baking bread in this kitchen. Like if you tell people the things that they will do and that, think about who would live in that house and think about what they would do and what their hobbies would be and put that in. Like you can't, certain things you can't mention, like obviously people can't mention kids or families because that's like a protected class. You don't want to say something along the lines of perfect for families because people without kids might want to live in this house, so you want to make sure you avoid stuff like that. Sometimes you have to
At
describe a
this
house that is
On this
like
cute
a
little street, there's a mansion at the end of the cul-de-sac.
yeah, but there is something you want to use words also. There was one that we did that was like a really very tastefully done but very rich looking house. And I don't mean like rich in terms of the price point, although it was on the more expensive side, but it wasn't the most expensive house that we've ever listed, but it just every detail in it, like they had these beautiful, really deep set bookshelves and they had just tons of built-ins and tons of like little details, and it definitely felt like somewhere where a president would live. It felt very executive. You want to use words that are descriptors of the people who would live there. Like think about who. No,
Yeah,
don't think about what. People who like certain things
right,
typically think
right.
of themselves a certain way. You want to be speaking to that person. And then when they get to the house, after they've fallen in love with the description, then you hit them with new this, new that, updated this, new paint, fresh carpet, da da da, whatever they did, whatever the sellers did to make it nice.
To me, they're going to see that. And to me, those facts are okay in the booklet that you pass out or whatever information you pass out. But you hit the nail on the head in the regard that a purchase of a home is typically an emotional decision. I can picture myself living there. I like the neighborhood. I like the school district. Whatever it's, you're just building upon making me feel that I can feel at home in that house, and that's extremely important. And that really comes down to putting together everything that we talked about, because you're going to want to look at your house and be pragmatic about its condition. You want an agent that's going to tell you exactly what they think. You're going to want to change things if you need to, so you also should look for an agent that has concierge service where they can provide you with contractors and get this work done, because one of the keys is getting it done quickly so you can get on the market and move forward with what your plans are, having the right banking people, having all the information you can possibly have to make your sale successful. And then lastly, to put the icing on the cake, is to price your house right.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. So I'm just going to throw this in here at the end because I think we've run through what we wanted to convey. When an agent comes to see you, they're inevitably going to ask you what you think your house is worth. So let me take you through a scenario or an example that makes this simple. If I'm looking at your house and you come back and you say, well, I believe my house is worth $350,000. Depending on the agent, they're looking at it going, oh, then this is going to be easy because when we get there, we're going to talk price house at $350,000. Why did they say that? They said it because they're in agreement with you. So why would you refuse to list your house with them if they're in agreement with the price that you told them you want?
Yeah.
And they're of the school that they're not worried about you getting highest dollar. They may tell you that, but the bottom line is if you're off, they're going to put you into a contract for a year and the market's going to talk to you. And the
What you're
market
saying
speaks.
is don't have a yes
Silence,
person.
the one thing a statement that one of my partners says all the time is the market speaks and silence is a language. We take the approach that we're going to be honest about your house. We're going to tell you what we think the condition is. We're going to tell you what we think you should correct. We're going to tell you what the stager had to say, and we're going to look at staging. We're going to talk about the actual value of your house and where it should be priced. Now, we don't control that. You could still price it where you want.
Yeah, but you're
made
going to
a
give
key
your
statement.
opinion.
Right. But here's the real reason not just that we want you to be successful, but you said it earlier, we're going to make an investment in that listing. And if we don't believe we can get it sold, it's not worth listing to us.
People like, as much as they don't want to admit, they like hearing someone say, I agree with you. Your house is worth this. This is what we'll list it for. You should listen to the person that you're hiring. To be honest, if I were selling my house in 2025 or ever, but specifically for this episode, I would make sure that I am asking them what they would do. You want to be you ultimately it is your decision, but you are asking for people's opinion, you are asking for their help. They see this more than you do. You are not touring houses every day. You should listen to what your agent has to say.
Boy, you said the magic words. If an agent that's in that 10% bracket is in this every day, they're dealing with properties every day. They're dealing with problems every day. They're dealing with communications. So let me say something that you had mentioned earlier. I kind of let go. You said, do you really want to sell your house on your own? Here's two things that have really changed since I first entered the business.
Okay.
The amount of paperwork, the amount of due diligence that an agent has to do on the job to make sure that house closes is unbelievable. It was never like that. They used to say, oh, we're going to get to a point where there's less paperwork and this could be a paperless transaction. Oh my gosh, it's unbelievable.
Never. It's actually insane. Yeah, it's so much work that I think people don't realize. And I'm not even talking about the fun stuff, like, because to be honest, talking to the stager and doing the photos and the description, that's actually like the fun part. The paperwork, I will never like anyone who makes me do paperwork. So yes, please, agent, take that off my hands.
So to recap, in 2025, the things to do if you're going to sell your home: figure out where you're going to move and have a game plan. Know the costs of selling your house. Have an idea of where you think it should be priced, but break out the numbers and see if everything works for you, and also look at the cost of that new home to make sure you're going to have the financials to be able to do that as well. The next step would be to interview agents. You want to find an agent who's going to get invested in selling your home, not just putting a sign in the yard and hope and pray that it sells. You want to work with an agent that does staging, that has a great photographer, and has a great idea on and is honest with you on the value of your house. And then move forward and anticipate that if you do the staging and get it all done right, that it's going to probably move faster than you thought, and quite possibly because of the lack of inventory for more money than you anticipated. And I hope that's it. Our goal is, we hope you're successful.
Yeah, we just want you to make this a seamless process and hope that this information helps. Thank you so much for listening to our 2025 seller home tips to get you started at the beginning of this new year. Thank you so much for listening. We are Vanessa and Dawn, and we are the Residential Home Authority. Like and subscribe, and leave comments if you have more questions. We'll be doing a lot more episodes. Thank you.
I like how you do that. Have a great day.
Thanks, Dad. Love you.
I love you too, sweetheart.